At Thanksgiving, my sister discovered I had $12 million and my family demanded Reddit stories. Please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. Poke. I was halfway through carving the turkey when my sister suddenly shouted, "You're a millionaire?" The knife froze in my hand. Everyone at the table stared. My mom's fork clinked against her plate, and my dad leaned forward, squinting like he was trying to read my mind. She claimed she saw my bank statement on a public records site, but I knew that was a lie. A week earlier, she'd been in my home office, and I'd noticed the desk drawer slightly open. She must have snooped. Almost instantly, the mood flipped. My mom's voice went sharp. "Family helps family," she said. "And you've been hiding this from us?" My dad nodded, and my brother-in-law smirked. "Selfish," he muttered. Then came the demands. My sister announced that $3 million each would be fair. My parents backed her up. My stomach twisted. Years ago, when I started a tiny tech startup from my apartment, they'd all laugh. They told me I was wasting my life, called it a phase, said I'd end up broke. I worked night after night, barely sleeping, eating ramen, pouring everything into it until it finally took off. The $12 million wasn't luck. It was years of sacrifice they never supported. That night, I couldn't shake the betrayal. Then I dug deeper and found the truth. My sister was drowning in debt. She'd taken out massive loans for luxury cars, vacations, and a failed boutique. She didn't want to help the family. She wanted me to save her from bankruptcy. I decided to give them exactly what they deserved. I told them I was creating an inheritance trust in Grandma's name. Anyone in the family could get a payout if they signed a simple agreement showing they were financially responsible, debt-free, and committed to donating part of their share to charity. At our next family gathering, I made the announcement. They acted thrilled, shoving pens in my face to sign the papers. Each page listed personal financial questions, debts, unpaid taxes, spending habits, and a clause making everything public record. They signed without reading carefully, grinning like they'd won. A week later, I regretfully informed them the trust's funding fell through after legal complications. But since the agreements were binding, their financial disclosures became public. My sister's debts and spending splashed across local gossip. My parents were embarrassed to be seen in town. My brother-in-law stopped making smug comments. I blocked their numbers, donated $2 million to a children's hospital, and bought a little cabin in the mountains. Now, when people in town whisper about me being cold, I just smile. They can talk all they want. I've finally got peace, and that's worth more than $12 million. My sister lifted her wine glass, gave me a little smirk, and said, "I know about the $12 million. We should talk." The words landed heavy, but I kept my face calm. Dinner had gone smoothly until then, just turkey, laughter, and the usual holiday small talk. Later, when everyone was clearing plates, she cornered me in the kitchen. She leaned close, voice low, telling me she needed help paying her kids' medical bills. She made it sound urgent, life or death, like I'd be heartless to say no. For a moment, I actually considered it. I pictured my nieces, and I thought maybe I could cover the expenses without it becoming a big family issue. But something about her tone bothered me. She wasn't nervous, she was confident. Too confident. That night, I did some digging. I found no hospital bills, no unpaid treatment. What I did find was a foreclosure notice on her huge suburban house, the one she bought after her husband got a promotion. She'd been spending big, designer furniture, vacations, cars. This wasn't about her kids. It was about keeping up appearances. The next day, my parents called. They didn't ask, they told me. They said I owed it to her, that family sticks together. My dad reminded me of the sacrifices they made when I was young. It was all emotional pressure, and it stung because I could see they weren't defending her out of love. They were defending her out of pride. I kept quiet and started watching. Soon I saw messages between my sister and my mom. My parents had actually pushed her to get the money from me. I was their project. When I didn't give in, she crossed a line. I woke up to find my email hacked, bank information forwarded to cousins, and an aunt I hadn't spoken to in years. Suddenly, relatives were checking in and bringing up opportunities we could all benefit from. That's when I decided to turn it around. I told my sister I'd give her a big check, life-changing money, but I wanted her to publicly thank me at the upcoming family reunion. She didn't hesitate. Within days, she was telling her friends about how generous I was going to be, even making comments online about being set for life. The reunion came. I stood in front of everyone and made a little speech about gratitude and loyalty. Then I handed her a giant cardboard check, the kind you see in game shows. In bold letters it read, "For betrayal services rendered." The room went silent. My sister's face turned red. Someone laughed nervously, and then the muttering started. She stormed out without a word. My parents followed her, but they didn't look at me. I left soon after, drove home, and changed my phone number the next day. I invested my time and money into people who actually cared about me, friends, causes, things that mattered. My family could tell whatever story they wanted. I knew the truth, and now so did they. "We could turn your millions into billions," my brother-in-law said, sliding a folder across the table. Dessert plates were still out, and my sister was smiling like this was the most normal conversation in the world. I realized right away how they knew. A few days earlier, I'd taken a call about a new investment while they were in the next room. I hadn't said much, but apparently enough for my sister to put the pieces together. She launched into the pitch before I could respond. It was a real estate development, supposedly low risk, high reward. My brother-in-law spoke fast, throwing out big numbers, talking about flipping properties and international buyers. My parents leaned in, nodding. My mom added that this would be a great way to help them get on their feet while making money myself. I didn't argue. I just said it sounded interesting and that I'd need to see the full plan. My brother-in-law handed over the folder, spreadsheets, glossy photos, even fake letters from investors. When they left, I called a friend who works in finance. Within hours, I had the truth. The documents were a mess. The properties weren't even for sale. And the worst part, they'd already been using my name to get banks to approve loans. My signature was forged. If anything went wrong, I'd be the one holding the bag. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I played along. I told them I'd talked to my team, and that we were ready to go forward. They looked thrilled, already talking about how soon we'd all be rich. We set a date for the closing meeting. They thought it was just us and a notary. What they didn't know was that I'd also invited my lawyer and the police. The moment the meeting started, my lawyer laid out the forged signatures and fraudulent paperwork. Then 2 officers stepped in and asked my sister and her husband to stand. My sister's face went pale. My brother-in-law tried to laugh it off. But when the handcuffs came out, the room went quiet except for my parents yelling at me. They called me a traitor. They said I'd ruined the family and that I should have handled it privately. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I walked out while my sister was still shouting my name. I didn't look back. That night, I booked a moving truck. 2 months later, I was in another state, living in a quiet neighborhood where no one knew my story. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I didn't take their calls. I invested my time into work, friends, and things that actually mattered. They could sit in whatever mess they'd made. I was done cleaning it up for them. Grandma's will was read after dinner. We were all sitting around her lawyer's office, and that's when they heard the number, 12 million. Every penny, the lawyer said, was going to me. The room went still for a second. Then the complaints started. My sister said it wasn't fair. My brother said Grandma would have wanted it split. My parents agreed with them, talking about fairness and keeping the family together. I didn't argue. I knew the truth. For years, none of them had visited her. They skipped birthdays, holidays, even her last Christmas. I was the one who drove her to doctor's appointments, brought her groceries, fixed things around her house. She told me once she wanted to make sure I was taken care of. A few weeks later, I came home and noticed things out of place. A drawer half open, a file missing from my desk. It didn't take long to guess who it was. The next day, I installed cameras in my house, hidden ones. It didn't take long. 2 nights later, my siblings let themselves in while I was out. They went through my drawers, opened cabinets, and even checked behind picture frames. One of them found my safe and tried to guess the code. I saved the footage. First, I sent it to the police. Then I made an anonymous upload online. Small towns move fast when there's gossip, and by morning, everyone had seen it. 2 grown adults rifling through their own siblings' home for money. My parents tried to defend them, saying they were just curious. The people in town didn't buy it. My siblings started avoiding stores and restaurants where they used to hang out. Even old friends stopped inviting them to things. I stayed quiet. No social media posts, no public comments. I just sold Grandma's old house and some other property she left me. With the money, I bought a place in the city. No one knew my new address except the lawyer who handled the sale. It was strange at first, being so far from the place I'd grown up, but it felt cleaner, lighter. I didn't have to watch my back every time I went to the grocery store or wonder which relative was plotting their next move. A year later, I started a scholarship in Grandma's name for kids in the town who wanted to go to college but couldn't afford it. I didn't tell my family. I didn't need to. The people who mattered would know where it came from. My siblings could keep their bitterness. I had better things to spend my life on. My father slammed his fork down so hard the plate rattled. "You've been hiding millions while your own family struggles?" he said. My sister sat across from him, looking satisfied, like she'd been waiting for this moment. I didn't need to ask how they found out. A few days earlier, she'd been using my laptop to check her email. I'd stepped out for a call and came back to find my banking tab still open. She must have taken screenshots. They didn't waste time. My parents said their small business was about to go under, and they needed a big loan to save it. My brother said it would be an investment in the family. My sister suggested I cover both their business and her husband's failing auto shop. I told them no. Years ago, I'd been the one asking for help, and they'd turned their backs. I wasn't going to pour money into things that were already sinking. That's when my sister started talking. To cousins, to old neighbors, even to people at church. She told them I was selfish, that I'd abandoned my family now that I was rich. Instead of arguing, I made a plan. A week later, a press release went out, a $1 million donation to the local homeless shelter, made in my sister's name. The shelter posted about it on social media. The local news picked it up. The headline called her a surprising new face in philanthropy. She couldn't deny it without looking bad. People were congratulating her in public, thanking her for her generosity. At first, she tried to act like it was nothing, but I could see the irritation in her face. And she still had no money in her account. When the family realized what I'd done, they went quiet. My parents looked embarrassed. My brother stopped calling. My sister was stuck pretending to be proud of something she didn't do. It didn't take long for her friends to start asking questions. Someone must have figured it out, because within a month, her social circle had cooled. She wasn't getting invited to the same events. A couple of people unfriended her on. The whispers started, about how she'd lied, about how she'd taken credit for something she didn't deserve. I never confirmed or denied anything. I just let the story live on its own. Since then, I've kept giving, but always anonymously. Homeless programs, youth centers, animal rescues, any cause I believed in. But not a dollar went to my relatives. They'd wanted my money to save themselves. Instead, it went to people who would actually use it to help others. And I didn't have to lift a finger to watch my sister's little rumor turn right back on. She stood up in the middle of dinner, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You made me sign a prenup when you had 12 million?" My sister-in-law shouted. Every fork stopped moving. My spouse froze, clearly blindsided. It didn't take me long to figure out how she found out. The witness who'd signed the prenup years ago was a mutual acquaintance. Somehow, my sister-in-law had started asking questions, and he'd told her what I was worth back then. The next day, my sister called. She said it wasn't right that her brother, my spouse, didn't have access to the money. She claimed it was about fairness, but it was obvious she saw me as holding something back from their side of the family. Soon, the rest of them joined in. They accused me of manipulation, of controlling the marriage. They hinted that I was only with my spouse to keep everything for myself. It stung, but I knew their sudden outrage had nothing to do with fairness. It was about opportunity. While they were busy pointing fingers, I started looking into my sister-in-law's life. A few quiet conversations later, I learned something bigger. She'd been talking about leaving her husband for months, waiting until she could get a large payout. The prenup had ruined her plan. I decided to make her show her hand. I told the family we'd arranged a settlement meeting with a mediator to resolve the money issue. She agreed instantly, no hesitation. On the day, she walked in dressed like she was headed to court. My mediator was actually my lawyer, who calmly started going over the prenup terms in detail. Then he brought out photos and messages, proof she'd been having an affair with a co-worker for over a year. The air in the room changed instantly. She tried to deny it until my lawyer read her own texts out loud. My spouse's face went pale. My sister-in-law's plan to get a payout had just collapsed in front of everyone. The family didn't apologize. They just looked away, embarrassed but still unwilling to admit they'd been wrong. That was fine with me. Within a month, my spouse and I had moved to another state. No phone calls, no visits. We didn't tell them the address. Not long after, word got around about her affair. It reached her workplace, and she lost her job. Her social life thinned out too. People didn't want to be connected to her drama. I put part of my money into a trust that would support my spouse's needs for life. That way, no matter what happened, we'd be secure. The rest stayed exactly where it belonged, out of reach of people who saw us as nothing more than a bank account. I never thought I'd be standing in front of my whole town, auctioning off my sister's apology letter. But that's where things ended up. It started when she somehow got into my online brokerage account. I still don't know exactly how, but she'd been in my house a week earlier using my Wi-Fi, so it wasn't hard to guess. She found out about my investments and the total in my portfolio, more than 12 million. She called the next day with a number. She said 5 million was the minimum I should give the family. She made it sound like I was holding something back from people who deserved a share. I told her no. Within days, she was telling people around town that I'd stolen the money. She didn't have details, but she didn't need them. Just enough whispers to make people suspicious. I knew if I didn't push back, the rumor would stick. So I started collecting proof. Every text, every email, every voice message where she talked about the money or admitted she'd gotten into my account went into a neat folder. When I had enough, I announced a charity auction. I rented the community hall, got a few local businesses to donate items, and quietly slipped one more special item into the lineup, an unsealed envelope labeled Full Confession. On the day, the room was packed. People bid on gift baskets, sports tickets, a weekend getaway. Then it was time for the final lot. I read the first line aloud. I shouldn't have said you stole the money. The room went dead quiet, then the bidding started. It climbed fast, 5,000, 10,000, 20. By the time the gavel came down, it was $50,000, all for the letter where my sister admitted to lying. I handed the money straight to a local charity and made sure the receipt had her name listed as the donor. She couldn't take it back, couldn't deny it, and couldn't explain why she'd written it in the first place without admitting what she'd done. She stopped showing her face in town after that. My parents tried to smooth things over, but the truth was already out. The family didn't gather like it used to. People chose sides, and most just avoided the whole mess. For the first time in years, my phone was quiet. No surprise visits, no sudden emergencies that only I could fix. I used the piece to start a small business I'd been thinking about for years. The money stayed where it belonged, and so did my boundaries. My sister had wanted to make me look small in front of everyone. Instead, she'd handed me the chance to set the record straight. One bid a time. My sister's first words to me in 5 years were, "If you give me $2 million, I won't tell your wife." No hello, no small talk, just that. We were at Thanksgiving, and she said it like she was offering me a friendly deal. I'd made my money years ago from an IPO. It wasn't something I talked about. My wife knew we were comfortable, but I'd never gone into exact no. My sister clearly thought she'd found an angle. She leaned in and said she'd tell my wife I'd hidden assets during the marriage. It was ridiculous. Nothing I owned had ever been hidden, but she figured the threat alone would make me pay. I acted rattled. I told her we needed to work this out, and asked her to put everything in writing so I could review it. She didn't hesitate. The next day, an email landed in my inbox, spelling out her demand and her promise to stay quiet in exchange for the money. I saved it immediately. It was all I needed, clear, written proof of extortion. I called my lawyer, and we put together a plan. I told my sister we'd meet for a mediated family discussion to settle everything without lawyers. She agreed right away, probably thinking she'd finally get her payout. When she walked into the meeting, she saw me, my wife, and a man she thought was the mediator. In reality, he was there to witness what happened next. We talked for a few minutes, long enough for her to repeat the demand out loud. Then the door opened, and 2 police officers stepped in. They read her rights on the spot and took her out in handcuffs. She tried to shout over them, saying I'd set her up, but the officers had her own words in writing. Later, my parents called furious. They said I'd gone too far, that I should have handled it privately. I told them I had handled it, by making sure she couldn't try the same thing again. The story got out quickly. I didn't hide from it. When a local reporter asked, I explained exactly what happened, that my sister had tried to blackmail me and I'd chosen to deal with it legally. The coverage was short and factual. After that, we cut contact completely. My wife and I booked a long trip overseas, somewhere warm and quiet, far from anyone who knew us. I didn't check messages, didn't answer calls. The only emails I opened were from friends or work. My sister had wanted to use my life as leverage. Instead, she'd handed me the proof I needed to close that door for good. When I told them I was broke, my sister laughed and said, "Nice try, we saw your account." She wasn't wrong. My bank info had been sent to her by accident when I forwarded the wrong file. She didn't waste time sharing it with the rest of the family. Calls started coming in. They weren't asking, they were expecting. Everyone had something urgent. Debts to pay, businesses to save, college funds to fill. The tone was the same from each one, like the money was already theirs. That's when I decided to turn the story around. I put my house on the market and bought a small, rundown place in a cheaper neighborhood. I sold my car and got an older model. I made sure every change looked like a desperate attempt to cut costs. My sister didn't buy it. She told anyone who'd listen that I was lying. She even started showing up in places she thought I might be spending big money. I knew she was hoping to catch me in the act, so I gave her something to find. I accidentally left a folder on my desk with fake investment documents, showing I'd put almost everything into a risky venture, and lost it all. The numbers were bad enough to make me look ruined. Not long after, she stopped watching so closely. The family's tone shifted. Calls became less frequent. They figured there was nothing left to take, so they moved on to other things. While they thought I was scraping by, I quietly bought a vacation home out of state under a different LLC. It was far enough away that no one in the family would ever stumble across it. Months passed. I didn't hear much from them until news broke that my sister's boutique had closed. She'd spent heavily expanding it, expecting to keep living off handouts from me. Without the money she thought she'd get, the business collapsed. I didn't call to gloat. I didn't even acknowledge it. I just stayed quiet, enjoying the space I'd created. The less I said, the less reason they had to look my way again. Life settled into something calm. I spent more time at the vacation home, traveling when I wanted, working when I felt like it. There was no drama, no sudden emergencies landing on my lap. My sister had laughed when I told her I was broke. Now, I was the only one smiling, and I didn't need to explain why. They sat me down like I was on trial. My mother leaned forward and asked, "Where did you get the 12 million?" The turkey hadn't even been carved yet. Every face at the table was locked on me. The questions came fast. My brother hinted at illegal deal. My father asked if I was laundering money. My sister led the charge, talking about how I owed them for all the years they supported me. Supported me? I remembered sleeping in my car after they kicked me out at 18. I kept my voice calm, but inside I was boiling. Then the whispers started. A neighbor called to tell me my sister had been spreading stories, claims I'd gotten my money through crime. By the next week, people in town were looking at me different. I decided I wasn't going to let it slide. I hired a private investigator. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. My sister had a hidden offshore account. The money in it came from fraud. Not small scams either. Serious cases that could get her years in prison. I didn't confront her directly. Instead, I made an anonymous call to the IRS. Within weeks, agents were at her door. Her accounts were frozen, her assets seized. The confident smirk she wore on Thanksgiving was gone. The calls from family started again, but this time they were desperate in a different way. They wanted me to bail her out, to fix the misunderstanding. I told them I wasn't getting involved. There was no misunderstanding, just consequences. They called me cold, heartless, ungrateful. I didn't argue. I just stopped answering the phone. That next Thanksgiving, I didn't see them. I rented a cabin with a few close friends. We cooked, laughed, and nobody asked for a dime. For the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged.